59 Ford Wheelman, and as promised, I'm back here in Badlands National Park. We're actually here to check the park out. Going to do some driving around, some walking around, and seeing what we see. Stand by, there's going to be some highlight reel coming up. All right, as we begin our video, we are here in the Ben Rifle Visitor Center in the parking lot, and we're kind of overlooking some of the terrain we see in the Badlands here. I hope I pronounced his name right, and I'm going to get into Mr. Rifle's history a little bit further later on. But before I do, let's talk about the Badlands National Park itself. Badlands was established as a national monument in March of 1929 and was made a national park in November of 1978, so fairly recently. The Badlands National Park is actually the largest prairie area in the national park system, and it covers about 244,000 acres in southwestern South Dakota. Much of the video that you're going to see, at least while driving, comes from Badlands Loop Road, which, as the name suggests, kind of loops around the Badlands and gives you a pretty good view of the Badlands itself, the prairies, the formations, and also there's a number of pullouts where you can stop and take pictures and video, and you'll see a lot of the video comes from those pullouts. Just to give you some history of how Badlands was formed, because it's a fairly unique vista in the United States and pretty much around the world. 69 million years ago, many sediments were deposited because part of this was under the ocean. The sea began receding about 28 million years ago, and by relative comparison, fairly recently, about 500,000 years ago, erosion began, which formed a lot of buttes and spires, and you're going to see those here in Badlands National Park. In my estimation, a lot of the buttes and spires kind of look like they were something from outer space, and this would be a great setting, some parts of it, for a science fiction movie. And I'm going to go ahead and tell you up front, this video I think is pretty impressive. The sceneries, the vistas, and so forth, but it really doesn't compare to being there in person. Video and photographs does not do this justice. If you ever have a chance to see it, I can't recommend it strongly enough. Now, along the point of erosion, it should be noted that eventually erosion is going to claim everything you see in these videos. So at some point, this will all be gone. Of course, we'll all long be passed on when that happens, but it is something that we do is predicted for the future. Just by way of history, the Ogallala Lakotas called the area Makosika, which meant land bad. When the French traders made their way to the area, they kind of gave it a similar name. They called the Badlands La Mauvaise Terre à Traverser, and I'm probably pronouncing that terribly, but the basic meaning of it is land that is bad to cross or bad land to cross. There are some areas within Badlands National Park called Door and Window, and they're named for the openings in the formations created by water and wind. Again, erosion has created much of this and will eventually claim it all. There's upper prairie and prairie in certain areas. There's also a 100-mile ridge in the area known as the Wall, and that is where the town of Wall, South Dakota gets its name. There's a fairly famous drugstore in Wall, South Dakota that we visited. I wouldn't go out of my way to see it, but if you happen to be in Wall, it's probably worth a look. You'll see some color striations in some of the formations. Those are caused by different soils settling on top of each other over the millennia. Volcanic ash mixed with different siltstones and mudstones and create these interesting patterns that are fairly pleasing to look at and give the area a distinct look. I mentioned that I'd get into who Ben Rifle was. Mr. Rifle was actually a federal administrator for reservation affairs in eastern South Dakota from 1961 to 1971, and he was a very strong advocate for the Native Americans in the area at the time, so the Visitor Center again is named in his honor. The inside part of the Badlands, and there's a few residential areas, very few, is actually named Interior. It was established in 1881, and it was named by the town postmaster at the time, after he received a letter, I believe it was a he, from the U.S. Department of the Interior, and the postmaster decided to name the area that because it was in the heart of the Badlands, or the most interior part of the Badlands. In 1920, the population expanded to the all-time maximum of 200, but currently it has about 67 permanent residents. There's a fossil exhibit trail. You might have seen the boardwalk, and a lot of this is out of order. I haven't keyed at all the visuals that you're seeing, which I know is a little bit challenging to follow. Apologies for that. I just kind of had to put together a narration, and it doesn't all go in order, but there's a boardwalk that has some fossil exhibits on it that's called the Fossil Exhibit Trail, about 400 yards long, fairly nice. They have some very interesting displays. They have some what look like bronzed reproductions of fossils that were found in the area. There were some very interesting things to note. For example, at a certain point, alligators because this was a marine area at one time lived as far north as South Dakota. There's also an area called Castle Trail, named for one of the formations. I guess it looks somewhat like a castle. During the Eocene, and I can't actually pronounce the word, but during certain prehistoric periods, millions of years ago, the Badlands did host animals that are now either extinct or have evolved into something else, a different form of animal. And along the line of fossils, there have been a number of fossils found in the area. The fossil discovery has been going on since about the mid-1800s. So there's been a pretty lengthy period of time that fossils have been sought in the area. Just as a side note, you saw the sign probably a couple of minutes ago about the rattlesnake, and there were a number of warnings in the area about rattlesnakes. And even though we didn't see any, which is probably just as well, there are a number of animals that are native to the area as well. Bison, bighorn sheep, pronghorns, deer, foxes, coyotes, prairie dogs, ferrets, mountain lions, eagles, falcons, owls, snakes, and turtles are all native to this area. Something interesting to note, and a little bit later on in this video, you will see a videos segment where there's some bison. There was a pool in a grassy area off to the side, and we happened to encounter some bison. Momentarily, I thought about kind of walking over, taking a little bit of a closer look and seeing if I could get a better video of them. But given what I know about the unpredictability of animals, I decided it was probably best not to. I didn't want to start a stampede, and I was afraid if I did, they might come after me. Now, we were here in June, and something to point out about the area itself, as I said, it's a very pretty area. You can see the weather was perfect. Couldn't have been better weather. Something to note, it is very dry, as you might expect. It's a drier climate, and it is also fairly warm. It was 104 degrees the day this video was shot. Now, I can tell you from experience and from coming back east where it rains just about constantly, and the humidity is always, or at least almost always, in the 90%. If you talked about 104, it would seem very miserable. But as it turns out here, it was warm, but it was very bearable. The only thing to be aware of is if you do come to the Badlands, especially in summer months, make sure to bring hydration materials with you because it is very dry, and I believe it would be very easy to dehydrate without even realizing it's happening until it's too late. Something else that was interesting was it was windy throughout some of this. Here's the bison I mentioned before. Bear with me. Like I said, the narration is a little bit out of order, but I'm just kind of covering a lot of ground all at once. But again, along the lines of hydration, again, the wind will blow the sweat off of you. And you really don't seem like you sweat that much. But again, hydration is a critical issue here if you're visiting. Some kind of sunshade, sunscreen is pretty important too, because again, that sun really can beat down on you after a while if you're outside a lot. And there's not a lot of trees, obviously, for cover. Again, we're taking the loop road, going through some formations, and we're working our way toward the end of the video. It's going to be a couple more minutes, and again, some pretty visuals I hope that you'll enjoy. But I'm going to point out that most of what you see here can be accessed by a passenger car. You don't have to have a specialized vehicle here. Pretty much any passenger car, Jeep, SUV, crossover, RV, ATV, pretty much anything that will roll on the roadway will get you here. There's a small section toward the end, however, where we took, and this is a Jeep Wrangler we're driving here, where we took the Jeep off-road a little bit, and we went to a vista that you could not see. So it helps to have a specialized vehicle because there's a few areas here in the Badlands National Park that you can only access with a special vehicle, four-wheel drive, and high ground clearance because it's pretty rugged terrain. You're going to see a little bit of the dirt road we took to get to that vista, and it is it can be pretty stout. Here we are, as a matter of fact. You're going to see some bumps and dips, and when we get off this dirt road, this two-lane road, well, two-track road, I guess, two-rut road, you will see, again, a pull-out type view of a canyon, and again, some pretty scenery there, and again, that can only be accessed with, as you can tell from here, look at the cant on that Jeep. So clearly you're not going to just take a Hyundai or a Kia through here. But once you get past this trail, basically, what you're going to get to is another pretty scenery. Not anything unlike what you've seen before, but it's just something that you can't access with a regular vehicle. You have to have something specialized, and it's kind of nice to have that to look at. Here we are when we finally made it to the end of that trail, and this is what you're going to see if you take that route and want to have one more bonus view of something pretty to look at. So in sum, I recommend Badlands National Park highly. I enjoyed it. It's very beautiful. Like I said, more beautiful than what these video images will truly tell you. And I can't say enough good about South Dakota. Of course, there's also, the Mount Rushmore there as well, and I highly recommend that also. So again, just enjoy the rest of this scenery. I'm going to kind of stop with my narration because I've covered all the high points. Once again, highly recommend Badlands National Park. If you get to South Dakota, by all means, make some time to check it out. Okay, guys, thanks for watching. And again, as always, please drive safely, live your best lives, and hope to see you guys on the road.